They tried to break you, but something went wrong. You were never supposed to survive what you went through, not mentally, not emotionally, not spiritually. There were moments when everything around you collapsed. People left, trust shattered, your own thoughts turned against you. It felt like life was closing in, like something unseen was trying to silence you before you even understood who you were. But here's the part no one talks about. You didn't break, you changed. What was meant to destroy you started reshaping you, quietly, powerfully, and now you're beginning to see it. You were never like them. From the beginning you felt it, that quiet difference. You saw things others ignored. You questioned things others blindly accepted. You felt emotions deeper than you could explain. And because of that, you were often misunderstood. They called you too much, too sensitive, too intense, too different. But what they didn't realize is that your difference wasn't a flaw. It was a signal, a sign that you weren't meant to follow the crowd. You were meant to see beyond it. The pain had a purpose. Every hardship you faced, it wasn't random. The betrayals, the loneliness, the moments where you felt completely abandoned, those weren't just painful experiences. They were pressure. And pressure creates transformation. You were being forced to grow in ways most people never do, to detach, to reflect, to rebuild yourself from nothing. And slowly, without even realizing it, you became stronger than the very things that once hurt you. When they tried to silence you, there's a reason people tried to dim your light. Not because you were weak, but because something in you made them uncomfortable. You challenged their illusions. You exposed truths they weren't ready to face. Your presence alone disrupted their sense of control. So they tried to silence you. Through doubt, through criticism, through rejection. But every attempt to suppress you only made your voice louder inside your own mind. You started waking up. At some point, something shifted. You began to see patterns. You started questioning everything, your past, your beliefs, the people around you. Things that once made sense no longer did. And that's when the awakening began. Not as a loud, dramatic moment, but as a quiet realization that you are not who you were told to be. You learned to stand alone. One of the hardest lessons you faced was solitude. Being alone when you needed support. Being misunderstood when you tried to explain yourself. But in that solitude, something powerful happened. You stopped relying on external validation. You stopped seeking approval. And for the first time, you began to trust yourself. Your strength is different. You don't carry strength the way others do. Yours isn't loud, it isn't aggressive, it isn't about proving anything. Your strength is silent. It's in your resilience, your ability to keep going when everything tells you to stop. It's in your awareness, your ability to see through deception. And it's in your heart, which, despite everything, still chooses growth over bitterness. You were tested for a reason. Not everyone goes through what you went through. Because not everyone is meant to become what you're becoming. Every challenge was a test, not to break you but to prepare you. To refine your mindset, to strengthen your spirit. To turn you into someone who can stand firm, even when the world feels unstable. They couldn't understand you. And maybe they never will. Because your journey isn't something that can be explained in simple words. It's something you've lived, felt, survived. You carry experiences that shaped you in ways most people will never comprehend. And that's okay. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You started seeing the truth. Illusions began to fall apart. You noticed how people wear masks, how systems are built on control, how fear is used to keep people small. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That awareness can feel isolating, but it's also liberating. You are not who you used to be. Look at yourself now. The way you think, the way you react, the way you see the world. You're not the same person who once felt lost and powerless. You've evolved. And that transformation didn't happen by accident. What was meant to stop you failed. Everything that was designed to hold you back failed. Every setback, every rejection, every painful moment, it didn't end you. It built you. Stronger, wiser, more aware. You turned pain into power. That's your gift. You didn't let your pain define you. You used it. You turned your struggles into strength, your wounds into wisdom. And now you carry a depth that can't be taught. You walk a different path. Your path isn't easy. It's not filled with constant validation or approval. But it's real. It's aligned with who you truly are. You are still rising. Even now you're still growing, still evolving. This isn't the end of your transformation. It's just another level. Embrace what you've become. Stop questioning your worth. Stop doubting your journey. Everything you've been through has shaped you into who you are today. You weren't never meant to be broken. You were meant to be rebuilt. Stronger, clearer, unshakable. This is your awakening. Not something to fear, but something to embrace. Own your power. Step into it fully. Without hesitation, without apology. And if this message spoke to you, then you already know. You feel it deep inside. Stay connected to that feeling, because that's where your truth lives. If you're ready to keep awakening, to keep growing, to keep becoming who you were meant to be, then support this journey. Like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Return to Awakening, because this is only the beginning. You stopped chasing and started attracting. There was a time when you tried to force things. You tried to make people understand you, tried to hold onto connections that were already fading, tried to prove your worth to those who never truly saw it. But something changed. You got tired, not weak, just aware. And in that awareness, you let go. Not out of defeat, but out of growth. And that's when everything began to shift. You realized not everyone deserves access. You started seeing people for who they truly are. Not who they pretend to be, not who you hoped they would become. And that truth, it was uncomfortable. Because it meant accepting that some people were never meant to walk with you long term. So you pulled back, you created distance. Not to isolate yourself, but to protect your energy. Your silence became powerful. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself. You don't argue like you used to. You don't chase closure. Because you've learned something most people never do. Not every battle deserves your voice. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than anything you could say. And your silence, it started making people notice. You began trusting your intuition. That quiet voice inside you, it got louder. The one that tells you when something feels off, when someone isn't genuine, when a situation doesn't align with your growth. Before you ignored it. Now you listen. And that single shift has protected you in ways you don't even fully realize yet. You outgrew your old identity. There are parts of your past that no longer feel like you. Old habits, old mindsets, old versions of yourself that you've quietly left behind. And sometimes that feels strange. Like you're becoming someone unfamiliar. But that's the truth of growth. You're not meant to stay who you were. You stopped fearing loneliness. Loneliness used to feel heavy. Like something was missing. But now it feels different. It feels like peace. Because you've learned how to sit with yourself, understand yourself, strengthen yourself. And in that space you realized you were never truly alone. You see through fake energy. You can feel it instantly now. The forced smiles, the hidden intentions, the subtle negativity behind kind words. You don't need proof anymore. Your awareness is enough. And because of that, you move differently. More carefully, more intentionally. You became selective with your energy. Not everything deserves your time anymore. Not everyone deserves your attention. And that's not arrogance. That's self-respect. You've learned that your energy is valuable, and once it's drained, it takes time to rebuild. So now you protect it. You stop seeking validation. You don't need approval the way you used to. You don't need constant reassurance. Because you've started validating yourself. Your decisions, your growth, your path. And once that happens, no one can control you the way they once did. You started moving in silence. Not everything needs to be announced. Not every step needs to be shared. You've learned to build quietly, grow privately. Because real transformation doesn't need attention. It shows itself naturally. You became harder to distract. Things that once pulled you off your path no longer have the same effect. Drama, negativity, empty conversations. They don't interest you anymore. Because you've seen what distraction does, it delays your growth. And you're no longer willing to go backwards. You accepted that growth feels uncomfortable. There are moments where you question everything. Moments where you feel lost again. But this time it's different. Because now you understand. Discomfort isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that you're evolving. You stopped running from yourself. Before, distractions were your escape. Now you face yourself. Your thoughts, your emotions, your patterns. And that takes strength. Because not everyone is willing to confront who they truly are. You are becoming unrecognizable. To the people who knew the old version of you. You seem different. Quieter, stronger, more distant. And maybe they don't understand it. But they're not supposed to. Because you didn't evolve for them. You started detaching from what once controlled you. Things that once had power over your emotions don't hit the same anymore. Situations that used to drain you now feel distant. You're no longer reacting the way you used to. And that shift didn't happen overnight. It came from lessons, from pain, from seeing the same patterns repeat until you finally chose differently. You realized peace is more important than being right. There was a time when you needed to prove your point, to make people understand, to correct them. But now you see the cost of that. The wasted energy, the unnecessary conflict. And you chose something higher. Peace over ego, silence over noise. You began realizing divine timing. Not everything is meant to happen when you want it to. And that used to frustrate you. But now you see the wisdom in delays. The protection in closed doors. The clarity that comes with waiting. What didn't work out wasn't a loss, it was alignment. You stopped forcing connections. You no longer chase people who hesitate to choose you. You no longer try to fix broken dynamics alone. Because you understand something now. Real connections don't require force. They flow, they align, they grow naturally. And anything less, you've learned to release. You see your past differently now. Things that once felt like punishment now look like preparation. Moments you questioned now make sense. You're connecting the dots, realizing that everything you went through had a role in shaping your awareness. Nothing was wasted. You became comfortable with being misunderstood. Not everyone will see your heart. Not everyone will understand your silence. And that's okay now. Because you're no longer living to be explained. You're living to be aligned. You learn that not everyone can go with you. Growth creates distance. Not always physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You start thinking differently, acting differently. And naturally, some people fall out of sync with you. It's not hate, it's not rejection. It's evolution. You no longer fear strting over. Because you've done it before. You've rebuilt yourself from nothing. You've faced uncertainty and kept moving forward anyway. So now, the idea of starting again doesn't scare you. It empowers you. You stopped ignoring red flags. You see things clearly now. The signs, the patterns, the energy. And instead of doubting yourself, you trust what you feel. Because every time you ignored it in the past, it cost you. And you've learned that lesson deeply. You became more disciplined with your life. You started paying attention to your habits, your time, your focus. You're no longer moving aimlessly. There's intention behind your actions now. Because you understand, your future is built on what you do daily. You started protecting your mind. Not everything deserves access to your thoughts. Not every opinion matters. You've become careful with what you consume, what you listen to, what you allow in. Because your mind is no longer a place for chaos. It's a place you've worked hard to bring into balance. You found strength in your own presence. You don't need constant noise anymore. You don't need distractions to feel okay. There's a quiet confidence in you now. A calm energy that comes from knowing who you are, even if the world doesn't. You started seeing your value clearly. Not based on what people say. Not based on how they treat you. But based on what you've survived, what you've learned, what you've become. And that kind of value can't be taken away. You realize your journey is rare. Not everyone is willing to face themselves the way you have. Not everyone chooses growth over comfort. And that's why your path feels different. Because it is. You are no longer easy to manipulate. You notice intentions now. You read between the lines. And because of that awareness, you've become harder to control, harder to mislead, harder to break. You stop dimming your light. You're no longer shrinking to make others comfortable. You're no longer hiding parts of yourself to fit in. Because you've realized, the right people won't be threatened by your light. They'll recognize it. You are stepping into your true self. Slowly, quietly, powerfully. Not with noise, but with certainty. This isn't a phase. This is who you are becoming. You stopped seeking permission to be yourself. There was a time when you held back. You filtered your words, adjusted your behavior, shrunk your presence just to be accepted. But that version of you no longer exists. Now you move with authenticity. You no longer ask for approval to exist as you are. You realize your energy speaks before you do. People feel you before you even say a word. There's something about your presence now, calm, aware, grounded. It's not something you try to project. It's something you've earned through everything you've endured. And whether people understand it or not, they notice it. You became more intentional with your life. You don't move randomly anymore. There's purpose behind your choices. You think deeper, you act wiser. Because you've learned that every decision shapes your direction. And you're no longer willing to drift through life unconsciously. You stopped romanticizing the past. You see it clearly now. Not through emotion, but through truth. What hurt you for a reason. What ended because it had to. And instead of wishing things were different, you've accepted them for what they were. You learned to walk away without explanation. Not every exit needs a speech. Not every departure needs closure. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is leave quietly. Without anger, without drama. Just clarity. You no longer fear OUTGROWING people. It used to feel like loss, like something was being taken from you. But now it feels like alignment. Because you understand. Not everyone is meant to grow with you at the same pace. You started honoring your inner peace. You protect it at all costs now. You avoid unnecessary conflict. You distance yourself from draining environments. Because you've felt chaos before, and you know what it takes to rebuild from it. Peace is no longer optional for you. It's essential. You became more observant than reactive. You watch more than you speak. You listen more than you respond. Because you've realized, people reveal everything through their actions. And once you see clearly, there's no need to react emotionally. You stopped underestimating yourself. For so long, you doubted your strength. You questioned your worth. But after everything you've survived, that doubt started to fade. Now you see yourself differently. Not as someone who barely made it, but as someone who overcame. You realize your scars are your proof. Every scar you carry tells a story. Not of weakness, but of endurance. Of resilience. Of battles you fought silently and survived. And instead of hiding those scars, you've started owning them. You no longer need to explain your growth. People may not understand your changes. They may question your distance, your silence, your transformation. But you don't feel the need to explain it anymore. Because your journey isn't for them to validate. It's for you to live. You started trusting the process. Even when things don't make sense. Even when the path feels uncertain. There's a part of you now that remains steady. Because you've seen how things unfold over time. And you trust that what's meant for you will find its way. You became more grounded in who you are. You're not easily shaken anymore. Not by opinions, not by setbacks. Because your identity is no longer built on external things. It's built on experience, awareness, growth. And that foundation is solid. You stop comparing yourself to others. You understand now. Everyone is on a different path. Different timing, different lessons. And comparing yourself only distracts you from your own journey. So you stay focused on your growth, your purpose, your evolution. You learn that your presence is enough. You don't need to prove your worth through constant action. You don't need to overextend yourself to be valued. Who you are is already enough. And that realization changed everything. You are walking in a different frequency now. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you move, it's all different. You're not operating from the same mindset anymore. You've elevated. And because of that, everything around you is starting to shift too. You no longer fear being alone with your thoughts. There was a time when silence felt overwhelming. When your own mind felt like something you needed to escape from. But now you sit with it. You listen, you understand. And in that stillness, you found clarity that noise could never give you. You started seeing setbacks as redirection. Things don't shake you the way they used to. When something doesn't work out, you don't immediately break down. You pause, you reflect. Because you've learned that not every closed door is a loss. Some are protection, some are guidance, and some are simply leading you somewhere better. You became less available to chaos. Drama doesn't pull you in anymore. You don't feel the need to engage in every conflict or respond to every opinion. Because you see it for what it is. A distraction from your peace. And you've worked too hard on yourself to go back to that. You started trusting your journey, even when it's unclear. There are still moments of uncertainty. Moments where you don't fully know what's next. But instead of panicking, you remain steady. Because deep down you know. You didn't come this far just to fall apart now. You no longer seek revenge. You've outgrown that mindset. The need to prove someone wrong, the desire to get even. It doesn't drive you anymore. Because you understand something deeper now. Your growth is your response. Your peace is your power. You learn to let people be who they are. You don't try to change people anymore. You don't force understanding. You observe, and you decide where they fit in your life. Because you've realized, people reveal who they are over time. And it's your responsibility to either accept it or walk away. You started rebolding yourself with intention. Not out of pressure, but out of purpose. You're no longer just reacting to life. You're creating it. Piece by piece, thought by thought, habit by habit. You're becoming someone you once needed. You no longer feel the need to rush. You've slowed down. Not because you've lost ambition, but because you've gained awareness. You understand that real growth takes time. And rushing the process only leads to repeating the same lessons. So now you move with patience. You became more aware of your triggers. Instead of reacting instantly, you pause. You ask yourself why something affects you, where it's coming from. And in doing that, you've gained control over parts of yourself that once controlled you. You stop looking for external saving. You don't expect someone to come fix everything anymore. You don't rely on others to complete you. Because you've realized, everything you need to rebuild already exists within you. And that realization made you stronger than ever. You started living more authentically. You speak more honestly. You act more in alignment with how you truly feel. You don't pretend as much anymore. Because you've reached a point where being real matters more than being accepted. You no longer fear change. You've been through it too many times. You've seen how endings lead to beginnings. How loss creates space. How discomfort leads to growth. So now, change doesn't scare you the same way. It prepares you. You began DTSA change from OUTSUMES. You do your part and you release the rest. You no longer try to control everything. Because you understand. Not everything is in your hands. And trying to force outcomes only creates unnecessary stress. You found power in discipline. Motivation comes and goes. But discipline, that's what keeps you moving forward. You've started building habits that support your growth. Even on the days you don't feel like it. And that consistency is shaping your future. You stop doubting your path. Even when others question it. Even when it looks different from what they expect. You trust where you're going. Because you feel it. And that feeling is stronger than any outside opinion. You are becoming unstoppable in a quiet way. Not loud, not attention-seeking. But focused, grounded, certain. You're building something within yourself that can't be easily shaken. And most people won't even realize it until it's undeniable. You no longer react to everything you feel. Not every emotion controls you anymore. You've learned to pause, to breathe, to observe. Because you understand now. Feeling something doesn't mean you have to act on it. And in that space between feeling and reaction, you found control. You started seeing through ILLUSIONS faster. What used to confuse you is now clear. You pick up on patterns quickly. You notice inconsistencies. You sense when something isn't aligned. And instead of questioning yourself, you trust what you see. You became more comfortable with uncertainty. You don't need all the answers anymore. You don't need everything to be perfectly planned. Because you've experienced enough to know. Life doesn't move in straight lines. And sometimes, the unknown is where the real growth begins. You stopped holding on to what hurts you. You don't cling to pain the way you used to. You don't keep reopening old wounds. Because you've realized holding on doesn't heal you. Letting go does. And that choice changed your direction. You started responding instead of reacting. There's a difference now. You think before you speak. You choose your words carefully. Because you know that reactions are temporary. But responses reflect who you've become. You no longer need to be understood by everyone. That need faded. The desire to explain yourself to people who never truly listened disappeared. Because you've accepted something powerful. Not everyone is meant to understand you. And that doesn't make you wrong. You began valuing depth over surface. You're not interested in shallow conversations anymore. You crave meaning, truth, realness. You want connections that go beyond appearances. Because you've lived through too much to settle for anything less. You stopped ignoring your own needs. You listen to yourself now. Your limits, your boundaries, your energy. You don't push yourself to exhaustion just to meet expectations. Because you've learned. Neglecting yourself comes at a cost. You became more discerning with trust. Trust isn't given easily anymore. It's earned. Through consistency, through actions, through time. Because you've seen what happens when trust is misplaced. And you've chosen to protect yourself differently now. You realize that not every loss is a failure. Some losses are necessary. Some endings are required for growth. And what once felt like failure now looks like redirection. Like something clearing the path for something better aligned. You started reorganizing your own patterns. You became aware of your habits, your reactions, your cycles. And instead of blaming everything outside of you, you took responsibility. And that's where real change began. You no longer seek comfort in old versions of yourself. You've outgrown them. Even if they felt familiar, even if they felt safe. Because you know, going back would mean shrinking. And you've come too far for that. You began choosing growth, even when it's hard. You don't avoid the difficult path anymore. You face it. Because you've seen what happens when you choose comfort over growth. Nothing changes. So now you choose differently. You stopped giving energy to what grow you. You're more selective now. Where your time goes, where your focus goes. Because you understand. Energy is limited. And where you invest it determines who you become. You realize your journey, requires courage. This path isn't easy. It requires letting go, standing alone, facing truths. But you're still here. Still moving, still evolving. And that alone proves your strength. You are walking with a different kind of confidence. Not loud, not forced. But steady, quiet, real. It's the kind of confidence that comes from experience. From surviving things no one saw. From becoming someone you once needed.